Okay, now can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, stretch hands out, and I want you to rub very hard till you feel the heat in the palms of your hands. And now I want you to clap. One, two, three. Can we do it quickly? Really hard. Massage those hands. Ready? One. Does that feel better? Okay, now you can sit.
Are you going to dance?
Oh no, later on. Okay. We heard a lot of things about leadership, and a lot of us have been thinking how we can become better leaders. BSR, of course, is there, so if you want to speak to him during lunch, he is available to share more secrets. Now we come to another part of our program, and it's our panel discussion. And we have some very interesting people on the panel, and our moderator will be introducing the speakers to you. But I'd like to share some details about the moderator. So when I read about the moderator's profile, I said, oh, there seems to be something going on here. And what came across was this. I'm going to demonstrate. Okay, so that means she doesn't really care what other people say. She is going to do exactly what she wants to do. And if there are barriers in the way, she's just going to push them aside. If there are rules that are no longer applicable, you know what? Just get rid of them. And that's exactly what she did. Now, this lady has a love affair with hospitality. She just loves it. And at the time when she decided to make a career in this, it was not really very accepted in her society. But that didn't bother her because she knew what she wanted. She knew that this is where her passion lay. This is where she could make a difference. This is where things could be changed, where more people, more women could come into the industry. So she decided, so what if people don't like what I do? More important, I like what I do. I want to do this, and I'm going to decide for myself what is good for me. So that's exactly what she did. And like right now, I'd like to invite her to join me. And I'm going to break with protocol and ask her to introduce herself. So could you please tell us your name, darling?
My name is Munal Hifsi. Assalamu alaikum, first of all. Good morning, everyone. Nice to be with you today. My name is Munal Hifsi. I'm from Ras Al Khaimah, UAE. And currently, I'm the Director of Human Resources for Jumeirah Zabil Sarai.
So now, Mona is going to take over because she's our moderator for the panel session, and she will be introducing the guests.
Thank you very much. Yes. Okay, so good morning once again. I would like to start by introducing our panelists for this session, which is about leadership as a choice, not a title. Our first panelist, Rana Abu Samha. She is the Senior Counsel at Minat Baker Hughes GE Company. Please, Rana, come to the stage. Nice to have you today with us.
Hello. Hello.
Our second panelist for today is Paul Lalovich. Paul is an organizational effectiveness consultant at Emirates Nuclear Energy. Hello, Paul.
Thank you.
Welcome. So, okay, and last but not least, we have Professor Christopher Abraham. Professor Christopher, he is the head of Dubai campus and senior vice president of institutional development, SP Jain School of Global Management. Welcome, Professor. So welcome, all of you, and nice to have you, and really benefit from your experience and wealthy careers. I would like to start with Rana, first of all. Rana, you are a lawyer and a profession, by profession, and a passionate human being. You have your own blog, you told me in our discussion. Rana has a blog actually that's called More Life by Rana. If you want to go and search, she writes about her own passion, passion-related things. I would like to know more about leadership in your point of view. How do you define leadership, Rana?
First of all, good morning, everyone. I want to thank Edwin and the organizers for inviting me. I know it's lunchtime. It's around lunchtime, so we'll try to be the session more interesting. I want to give you a bit of background about myself. As Muna has mentioned, I'm a lawyer by profession, but inspirational human being, and I love to empower and inspire people. My journey with leadership starts from early stage when I moved to Abu Dhabi at the beginning. I had, before that, 7 years experience in law profession. And before talking about the leadership and what the leadership means for myself, I believe leadership is the way to inspire people. This is my own definition, and I know there are lots of books, there are lots of seminars like this one who talks about what leadership is, but it's the ability to inspire and leave a human being better when you met them. This is for me what leadership is about. When I moved to Abu Dhabi, and as a woman with no knowledge of the law in the UAE, I was facing lots of challenges. One of them is was forced to demote my title, and this is very interesting because we talk about leadership without a title, to be able to accommodate and understand more about the laws, about the environment in the UAE. And even demoting your title and your position from senior to less at the beginning of your career does not mean that you don't have a leadership role or you don't have an impact on the organization that you are doing. Because although you might not have an executive title, but you have an executive presence as a person, as a human being, which is very important. And we need to tab, I'm sure my colleagues will tab along on this, that the executive title itself will play nothing into the impact and the role that you are doing in the organizationship if you don't have the executive presence. Okay. As I continued in my career, I realized that you are put into a position where you have to take decisions, you have to have an impact on people and on the results of your organization, regardless of the position or the title you are in. And this is where we talk about the leadership is a choice, not a title. And we're talking. I need to quote from Robin Sharma.
Rana, I'm interested. How did you come to know about this? Because this is the most interesting part now. I think in a lot of our careers, we just start a job and then we come to know about things. So, what was that light bulb point when you came to know, okay, so this is how leadership should be, or this is how I should do things, basically, as a leader?
It's because all the light bulb events comes from challenges, and this is not a coincidence that when you are put that you are actually leading, you are in a position to take decisions, and you are positioned to speak up. And this is one of the things that taught me during my career is the ability to speak up, even if you are surrounded with people with the same mindset or with the same path of taking decision, but to be able to stand up and speak up your opinion, that's what gives you, that's what how you figure out that you have the leadership, and it's not about your position, even if you are surrounded with C-suite people and you are not an executive title. You can speak up, you can have an impact, you can change mindsets, and you can pivot as well.
That's really interesting to hear a woman saying this because I feel like a lot of women, from my own career, a lot of time we feel like a little bit maybe intimidated, the word, like by speaking, especially if there are senior people around. So how did you manage to do that?
First, it comes with practice. Nothing, again, we are not as, although we have preferences, as Dr. Eid said before, but with practice, and the more you take decisions, and the more you fail, the more you practice to take decisions, and you succeed in your decisions. So it's all about practice at the end of the day. It's the most important point is to start learning and training yourself that you need to step up, you need to take actions, and you need to lead. And it's not because if you're a junior person in the organization or you're not senior enough, it's not my business and I have to shy away from it.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good mentality and thinking about it. Paul, I would like to move now to you. I was reading an article that was recently published. It was about leadership and safety. And I was actually just reading it 2 days ago in LinkedIn. It was a paper. And there were some interesting points that you discussed in that paper. So I just want to maybe just shed light with our audience, tell them more, how does leadership related to safety?
Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, leadership is one of the biggest, single greatest success factors, regardless of what your endeavor is. But what it really comes down to, we understand, and Mr. Singh was quite explicit in his presentation talking about the importance of vision. But ultimately, what makes or breaks the next step is capability to translate that vision in very quantifiable, easy to understand strategic and tactical elements. So this is one of the key success factors that I focus on, making sure that whatever leaders are planning to achieve and the organization is mandated with is actually doable. So one of those elements is obviously going to be culture of safety. I'm pretty sure if you have spent some time just reading general news, you would come across Tesla. Apparently, these guys are completely overwhelmed with the new orders, and their teams are working around the clock that is significantly increasing unsafe practices in the workplace. And no matter how great is your idea, vision, you know, if you have a significantly higher incident rate than any other organization around the world in your industry, that can tarnish your brand that you put such an effort to develop. So it all starts with the leadership, and it's really important to quantify all these elements of safety, making sure that you are a firm believer and you are a role model for your employees, that you really practice what you preach, and most importantly, that you set the right example for your employees. And this is where really leadership has to step in. And this has to be also followed by making sure that you have the right practices. So typically this is where guys like me come in, setting up the necessary infrastructure that will empower leaders to make the right decisions. So it's all about having the business intelligence, having the data-driven decision-making culture in the organization that will help leaders make the right choices within the shortest period of time. So I think at the end of the day, it comes down to quantifying your vision, making sure you have the right infrastructure, and you, most importantly, have the necessary information to make right decisions.
Okay, very good points, Paul. Also in our discussion, like you told me, you have been working in HR, in the HR field, in different areas of HR. So usually these concepts like leadership and anything to do with bringing about change in organizations, positive change, how did you see these things, how did you see implementing these things like in your organizations? Was it easy to do, to bring about such changes, to improve the leadership, or any challenges that you faced?
Well, when it comes to improving leadership, obviously you have to start with understanding what's your baseline, what is it that you're trying to achieve, and where you stand right now. So definitely tapping into some of the best practices when it comes to leadership assessment is a very good first step. But where I definitely spend a lot of time is making sure that leaders are accountable and making right decisions. And this has to do, again, a lot with the ability of the organization to make the right investments in the necessary infrastructure. So what kicks off the change, the whole cycle of transformation, usually has to be a commitment of the leaders. And they have to put their foot down. They need to draw that line in the sand. This is where the journey begins. And typically, if that junction doesn't happen, regardless what the endeavor is, things will collapse like a house of cards. So what my job is usually, to communicate in a very, open and frank fashion, that leaders need to be very clear with what's expected out of their employees, to set the tone and the pace, and most importantly, to describe how the success will look like, and then to make a commitment that is visible to everybody in the organization and start moving forward. That's where the true leadership comes.
Is it, in your opinion, is it easy to do this?
Of course not. People hate making decisions.
Okay, and how do we then do
It
it?
took me like 15 minutes to pick the tie this morning, So you can imagine when it comes to decisions that are really risky, that you have too many unknowns that you have to balance. Just imagine in any industry that is impacted by safety, be it airways, be it transportation, be it energy, it's really important that you factor in all elements necessary to make the right decision. And more often than not, you will not have a full transparency. So you can imagine, the burden our leaders are faced with when they have to make those make or break decisions. So what we as an organization have to realize that it's not always easy to be the leader. They're accountable and most visible individual in the organization when it comes to decision-making process. But we have to make sure that we do whatever is in our control to empower them by making sure that we operate in a transparent fashion, that we adhere to the best interest of the organization, that we're selfless, that we put the interests of the group ahead of personal interests and agendas, and ultimately build that necessary relationship and level of trust that will give confidence to leadership that they will make the right decision. Even if they sometimes make a mistake, that confidence will help them understand that with the team that they have and they have developed, they'll be in a good shape to make any necessary corrective actions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, really. It's very good insight. Thank you for sharing with us. I'll move to Professor Christopher. Professor, I've read about your profile, and it was very interesting. You have 3 postgraduate qualifications, mashallah, in business administration, HRM, and labor administration. And also, I read that you have a PhD, a scholar in positive psychology. I just want to understand one thing. We always talk about terms related to happiness, positivity in workplaces. And these are quite abstract terms, and we want to make them more quantifiable. How do you think you do this with your students to make them understand and implement?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Mona, for this fascinating question. I didn't realize that you're going to ask me something that's deeply passionate. For the last 17 years, this has been my pursuit. Now, I want to put this very clear. Happiness is not abstract. Happiness is hardcore science. So let me go back in time. Till 1991, the human system was more obsessed with what is wrong with us. I wish I could show you a slide. You'll be scared. Because for the last 100 years, we've been obsessed with looking at what is wrong with human beings. In 1991, a miracle happened. A miracle in the form of a professor called Dr. Martin Seligman. We call him the father of positive psychology. Dr. Martin Seligman took over as the president or chairperson of the American Psychological Association. And when he was looking at information pertaining, or the research pertaining to psychology, I don't know how many of you are familiar, psychology has so far 6 manuals. Each manual, which is thousands of pages, and they have a very fancy term for it called Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, DSM for short. DSM 1, DSM 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I wouldn't recommend you to read it because It's got all the imaginable and unimaginable diseases that a human being can have. So in short, for the last 100 years, we've been so obsessed with looking at what is wrong with us. And then comes Martin Seligman. He ties up with Gallup Institute, and then they do a lot of research. And today, let me tell you, it's a revolution which is transforming the world. And it's not just mumbo-jumbo, feel-good stuff. Let's also understand and put on record that His Highness Sheikh Mohammed is driving the happiness initiative, notwithstanding writing a best-selling book on happiness. Why is happiness a science? I want to put in three perspectives. We are human beings with a biological background. We are human beings with a neuroscientific background. And we are human beings who have a behavioral dimension to it. So in the last 20 years, what has happened is that we have understood more about our brains, we have understood more about our biological backgrounds, and we have understood more about our behaviors. The sciences that have contributed to this are cognitive psychology, evolutionary biology, neuroscience, and behavioral economics. So as a result, what has happened, we today have a completely different perspective about human beings. Okay, so you asked a question, is it possible to metric it? Is it possible to record it? Well, let me introduce you to, for those of you who may not be familiar, a group of organizations across the world called Firms of Endearment. Firms of Endearment, or FOEs for short. Endearment, I don't have time, otherwise I'll keep interacting and asking you what it is another beautiful term for the word love. So some of us might be confused. What has love got to do with business? Because love is always a romantic connotation, but what has it got to do with it? The professors who've done the research identify 5 key stakeholders whom you need to love. Okay, organizations that love. So who are they supposed to love? The very simple acronym, if you want to remember it, it's called SPICE. SPICE. SPICE stands for society, partners, that is suppliers and distributors, I for investors, C for customers, and E for employees. So if you love society, you will do the right things for society. In other words, you'll give the right products and services for society. If you love your suppliers and distributors, you have healthy, meaningful, transparent relationships with them. If you love your investors, you'll ensure that they get adequate returns on investment. And if you love your customers, obviously you'll take care of them and provide them the best products and the best services. And last but not the least, it's not in any specific order, when you love your employees, a fundamental behavioral law of reciprocity comes in. So if you do good to people, people will want to do good to you. And let me give you the statistical reference. You can go and check this out. Firms of Endearment did a comparison between 3 things. And they're all over the world. Firms of Endearment are across the world. They started with the US, then they went to Europe, then they went to Asia. So now we have a whole research across the world. What are these firms? Okay, I don't want to get into details. They compared Standard & Poor indices, which means what is the performance of S&P companies over a 15-year time period. They looked at good to great companies, Jim Collins, for a 15-year period, and they also looked at firms of endearment. You're not going to believe this, but you got to take it from me. If a Standard & Poor company has a 125% return on investment, and if a good to great has a 175% return on investment, a firm of endearment or a firm of love has a 1,600% return on investment. That's the power of love. So if you're talking about leadership, Paul spoke about the importance of transparency. Mona spoke about the power of practice. And I think these all encapsulated is what it is. Let me give you 2 simple examples to prove this. Okay, and I'm digressing for a moment from happiness. But I think we need to understand leadership in a different context. What is love? Love is giving, nature of nurture, nature, that's it. And if you're authentic about it, if you're trustworthy about it, if you're transparent about it, right? That's what it is. And these guys have created a leadership acronym called TACTILE, T-A-C-T-I-L-E. T stands for trust, A stands for authenticity, C stands for compassion, T stands for transparency, I stands for intimacy, L stands for love, and E stands for empowerment. And that's the new model of leadership. In fact, the professors go on to create a new model called conscious leadership. For too long, like we've been obsessed with the bad side of psychology, we have also been obsessed with the bad side of capitalism. So capitalism by nature is not bad, but
sorry,
conscious capitalism.
I'm
Yes.
cutting you,
Please.
but I think it's more important, like for us to understand, since you are a professor, how actually the students, because most of the leadership and related theoretical things taught in schools and universities, how your students actually bring that to their careers? Or
Very simple.
Yeah.
Very
how
simple.
they do
So
this?
we have, by the way, I'm very happy to announce that we have a Center for Excellence for the Science of Happiness being established by SP Jain Center of Global Management. We are just waiting for Her Excellency, the State Minister of State for Happiness, to give us a date to cut the ribbon. So it's any day in the offing. Now, a couple of months back, we took a very conscious decision to embed the power of positive thinking, the power of positive leadership, and the power of happiness towards our students. So we created a course, a 6-module course on the power of happiness, based on the science of happiness from the UC Berkeley module, University of California, Berkeley. One of it was about basically the science of happiness itself. The second module was on the power of gratitude. The third module was on the power of forgiveness. The fourth module was on the power of giving. And the fifth module was about mindfulness, which is again, being away from the technological contraptions and being mindful. And the sixth one was a practicum where they put this into practice. In the practicum, we told them, you have to come back with a live project. And these are MBA students who are going to become investment bankers, supply chain professionals, marketing professionals, so on and so forth. We said, you have to do something. Mr. Rathore spoke about making a difference. It's about having a big vision and making a difference. They said, don't come with some mundane stuff. And guess what? Some of you may be familiar with this. These students have created today what is called a Letters of Love campaign. As we speak, we have more than 1,000 love letters written by college students from this city, from this region, to refugee children across the world. We're trying to finalize. It's become a movement now. Sony TV has covered it. Gulf News had covered it. And we're going to have more than 3,000 plus, or even more if possible, of letters of love saying to all those children across the world in refugee camps, saying there's somebody who loves you, somebody who cares for you. And I want to again remind, we're talking about MBA students who are going to make profit-making ventures. So I think today there's a whole paradigm shift in our thought process about how we can change this. We are now talking about creating a professional certification in positive education to be rolled out to all the school teachers in the schools of United Arab Emirates, which means what? Every teacher becomes a positive transformational force.
Yeah.
It's got power.
It's really interesting.
Absolutely.
To hear these things are happening around us. Thank you for your insights. I would like to move back to Rana. Rana, being a woman leader and successful, as you are successful in your career, what are you doing to, for example, sponsor or help other women around you?
Thank you, Muna. First, I want to comment on your, thank you, Paul, and thank you, Professor, for your discussions. What you're saying about the love and the giving and the positiveness and happiness, it's amazing. We all want to nurture this and to provide for this. But this is, unfortunately, is not reality. This is not on the practical ground.
I gave a statistical reference how companies actually practice love.
Exactly. But the reality now, and if you look at the survey IPM has made, the one you shared, Paul, with what the CEO wants from the leadership, from the new generation of leadership, the most two characteristics that they want is creativity and integrity, which I have a couple of comments on. First, integrity, it shouldn't be even part of it, should be number one, should be the baseline for leadership for any human being. To be a great leader, you have to be a great human being. This is a very simple.
That's where love comes in.
This is very, exactly, this is very simple. But about creativity, if I were the CEO, they want for the new leaders, and I've seen lots of faces there, you are the youngster, you are our generation, the new generation, to be our leaders, to ask them to be creative, we should start from the first step of recruiting people, of resumes, and which I want to talk a bit about, which I don't like the way we are recruiting people, we are headhunting the new generation. We want them to be creative. We have to revamp all of this. The first thing that all headhunters, all recruitment, or you are in the HR and you understand that, they ask about the resume. I'm not my resume, you're not your resume. None of these people are their resume. The creative part, it's not in their resume. None of us will ask you, what's your hobbies? What's the last CSR work you have done? What's the last pro bono work you have done? How you spend your time, how you actually de-stress? What's your work-life balance? This is not the resume. If you want to be creative, and this is my point of view about creativity, and this is what we want the new generation to be innovative, you have to forget about the resume. We have to put the resume on the side, have the interview with them, and ask them these questions. Ask them about their emotional intelligence, how they want, ask them if they take 30 minutes a day and just walk in the nature. And we'll talk about the nature and how it's really rebuilt the creativity and innovation of the people. The way it's structured, I think it has to be all revamped. If we want to talk about creativity, we need to start with our HR. We need to start our headhunting. We need to start with our organization. The organization, if all of us and the most generation now, we're working 12, 14, 13 hours between meetings and conference calls and TPs. When's the time to be creative? When's the me time to actually sit and create how I want to solve this problem? If we want to be creative as well, and this is how it's the leadership, the new generation, why we are not putting the people in the right environment? If you are, if we're talking about like doctor as well, the conceptual, the structure, the analytical.
Yeah, I think also it goes back to what Paul said. It's about safety and
Exactly.
creating. It's all these things together, actually. Yeah. So if we provide a safe environment, then we can give people the land to be very creative at their work. Yeah.
Exactly. I want from these conferences and Edwin just not to have the conference about leadership, but to actually have a mission-based team to talk about government authorities, big international organization that if we want a new leadership, if we want a new generation, we need to start changing the way we recruit people, the way we interview people, the way we ask them. We don't ask, when we interview people, we don't tell them what the company does. What's the purpose of this company? What's the vision of this company? How I want to be creative if I don't know what's the vision of this company?
Yeah, I agree with you, yes. So
about the second question, so I don't want to take the time of my colleagues. The women and women leadership and empowerment and the challenges we face. I believe we have the same challenges as men, but we add to the challenges as women is one of the most important things I was talking about is the speak up. We as women tend up to be more shy in speaking up in big meetings. We have a tendency that because I'm a mother, I'm a working mom, I have kids, I have families, I have people to take care of, I cannot fulfill completely my career dreams. We have society, and you are one of the best examples that you are rebelling against society and stereotype. If we have as well, women tend to say less no to the society and environment. If you will, family, your father, your mother, doctors and pharmacists, you end up to being a doctor as a pharmacist. If your father's cousin, whatever, they are lawyers, you end up to being a lawyer. We need to change this, and these are one of the challenges that you face with women. In addition to, we have to be very frank about it. Like women, they don't have the same wage as men. It's an international issue that we're having. It's here in the US, it's in Europe. We work same working hours, but we still are not getting the same wage, the same benefits as men. Okay, so.
Okay, so any initiatives are being run in your place, like in your?
We have at my organization, we have specifically 2 initiatives that has been running. One of them is we are bringing women back to the workplace where they have left them like for 5 years to take care of their families, to have kids, to take care of their children. So we want to bring them back to the workplace, and we have been doing this initiative, and we have so much people actually enrolling into and coming back to work, because when you have taken a gap 5 years, and we are working on, very fast professional environment, people tend to think that you lost the ability to work professionally because you were a mom or you were like part of the family and you're taken care of. So we are doing this as my organization, AG. Second, we have a program, it's called Grow Plus program to transit female into a leadership position, to work mostly about the challenges that women face, and to try to tackle and find them the right position and the right environment, how they can excel, how they can work more, and how can they be creative as well.
Those great initiatives, I think a lot of companies need to run those initiatives. And with, in addition to what Rana said, actually, I would like to highlight something. A lot of time when we talk about, women's or like empowering women's leadership and all that, a lot of people have this misconception that we are talking about, women's and men or we and them. It's not that. It's like we're doing it together because a lot of leadership, like women empowerment schemes, need to be actually taking men into cooperation with us, and we can work together to add more value together. So this is something that I wanted to clarify. Paul, you, mashallah, you traveled around the world, you work in different places and all that. I just need to understand from your experience, did you feel there were any similarities or differences in how leadership is understood or done in different parts of the world? Or it is like...
It's quite an interesting question. Just recently I had a conversation with senior partners from a large management consultancy, and the conversation was around market maturity around the world. And my personal opinion is it's not about the regions, it's more about industry sectors. So what I would like to say with this, if you look at even the leadership maturity and capability, it's very much tied to a particular area of activity and industry sector. So a good example would be energy. If you compare energy companies of the GCC, they are at par with energy companies from around the world, and they can go neck to neck with energy companies from the most mature markets in this game. And same thing applies for the healthcare, airways industry. Like if you compare airways industry of the region to airways industry of more developed countries, you would definitely see a big gap in favor of the local airways companies. So when it comes to leadership, I think the same logic applies. It's different, but I would see it being different not based on the region, but more based on the sector they come from.
Okay, so basically you're saying it's maturity, how mature the markets are or the industries are. This is
It's how mature the particular sector is. That's what actually creates that segmentation.
Okay. Christopher, I would like to also maybe you enlighten us on this. There are a lot of themes or like definitions for leadership that obviously students maybe go through and read in their researches and papers. But how do you, for example, as professors, go and make sure that they have the right understanding to this?
Okay, currently, actually, I'm doing a workshop for my MBA students on leadership excellence. So one of the key themes is about what we call authentic leadership. Now, authentic leadership is no mumbo jumbo. It's a Harvard Business School program, which actually translates from the core of the inner being of somebody being transparent, truthful, trustworthy, and authentic, and translating that towards his stakeholders. So I think 21st century, the number one prerogative for any leader is to be authentic. Today, it's not even a choice. If you're not authentic, you could be blown apart by the digital media. So you don't have a choice. It's better to be authentic than anything else. So that's my first important thing. Leading from authenticity comes a whole range of other things which are behavioral. So if I walk the talk as the leader, then obviously I ensure that others walk the talk. So you have to walk the talk. And number two is building relationships, meaningful, compassionate relationships. Again, from the frontiers of neuroscience, we know we are social creatures, so we connect. And if we can get communities together, I think it can really work well. So authentic leadership, meaningful relationships, walking the talk would be key factors for 21st century leadership. But before I finish, I wanted to touch upon gender empowerment leadership. There is a transformation, as Rana rightly said, there is a huge bias even in so-called developed nations, and they still face it. But I want to put two perspectives in place, because by conscious choices, we can change that. Musical symphonies across the world, you would find them, I'm going to use a word, infested with more men. So with men, more men. Does that conclude that men are better vocalists and men are better musicians? Well, that was the order of the day for many centuries. till a few professors who decided to actually experiment and see. Till that experiment was done, women were made to do auditions in front of probably a male-dominated group of symphony people, and there would be that bias that creeps up, and they would be ticked off. And these professors said, all you need to do is, we'll give you music sheets of the musicians. We will not tell you what their gender is. We'll not tell you their names. And when they are performing, they perform behind a screen. So the people sitting here to judge them have no clue whether they are men or women or whatever. And guess what? In the last 15 years, there has been a 67% increase in the number of women who are now populating the symphonies across the world. What it tells us is women are equally good at doing everything and anything. It's just that we have a negative mindset that they can't do it. My second example comes from Iceland. The Iceland crisis was the first of everything. So we call it the mother of all financial crises. It started from there. Iceland went totally bust. It went bankrupt as a country. And then the government did something very simple, very remarkable. They got a bunch of women to look after the finances of the nation. I'm serious. And as we speak, 2017, fast forward, Iceland is back to prosperity because we all know this. Moms and sisters at home are much better financial managers, sorry to say this, than MBA qualified investment bankers. And that's the magic. So I think all it needs is a mindset change and an empowerment to look at women as equal, if not superior. So that's my take on that.
Thank you very much. I also remember a saying from Hazan Sheikh Mohammed when he said, we have passed already the stage of empowering the woman. We are empowering society through women now, because she is like half of the society. So very nice, a very enlightened discussion with all of you. I don't know, do we open question answer? Do we have time for question answer by the audience? Okay. Okay, so since we don't have time for question answers, I would like just to thank my panelists, Rana, Paul, and Professor Christopher for their valuable addition to today's seminar. And you can always connect with them during lunchtime. Thank you very much, and really well done. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.